What happens when one of country music's biggest superstars walks into the lion's den of daytime television and finds himself face to face with one of the most outspoken, unfiltered hosts in American broadcasting? What unfolds is not just another celebrity interview gone wrong. It's a masterclass in standing your ground. A battle of worldviews that escalated from polite conversation to one of the most explosive confrontations in live television history. This is the story of the day Blake Shelton walked on The View and delivered a verbal knockout that left Joy Behar speechless. The studio in chaos and millions of viewers picking sides in a cultural war that had been brewing for years. Before you witness what happened next, understand this. What you're about to read isn't just entertainment gossip. This was a defining moment when the mask came off, when Hollywood polish gave way to raw, unfiltered truth, and when a country boy from Oklahoma reminded the entire entertainment establishment exactly who he was and who he would never be. The morning started like any other episode of The View. Studio lights blazed across the familiar set. Audience members settled into their seats with excited anticipation, and the production crew went through their well-rehearsed routines. Blake Shelton was scheduled as a guest of honor there to promote his latest album and discuss his upcoming tour dates across America. It should have been softball questions, mutual laughter, maybe a plug for The Voice, standard promotional fare for one of country music's most recognizable faces. Blake entered the studio with his trademark confident swagger, that easy Oklahoma charm radiating from every step. He tipped his cowboy hat to the cheering audience, flashed that $1 million smile that had graced countless magazine covers, and settled into the guest chair with the relaxed posture of someone who'd done this dance 1,000 times before. The audience responded warmly, their applause genuine and enthusiastic. Here was Blake Shelton, coach on The Voice, chart-topping artist, beloved figure in American entertainment. What could possibly go wrong? The other hosts greeted him warmly. Whoopi Goldberg offered her customary professional welcome. Sarah Haynes smiled brightly, clearly excited about the musical guest. Even Sunny host seemed genuinely pleased to have him on set. Everything was proceeding exactly as Blake's publicist had promised. Friendly, light, promotional, easy morning television. But Joy Behar sat unusually quiet during those opening moments, a predatory smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Anyone who'd watched The View long enough recognized that look. It was a look of someone loading their ammunition, waiting for precisely the right moment to strike. Those who knew Joy's pattern understood what was coming, even if Blake himself didn't see the trap being set. The first few minutes of conversation flowed smoothly. Questions about the new album, commentary about his role on The Voice, pleasant banter about life in Nashville. Blake answered each question with practiced ease, his Oklahoma draw adding authentic charm to every response. The audience laughed at his jokes. The other hosts nodded along appreciatively. For those brief, shining moments, it seemed like just another successful celebrity appearance. Little did Blake know, the temperature in that studio was about to drop to Arctic levels. Well, Joy finally spoke, her voice cutting through the pleasant atmosphere like a blade through silk. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. She leaned forward slightly, that razor-sharp smile widening. Blake Shelton, the voice of rural America, or should I say, the voice of a very specific part of rural America. Blake's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. A slight narrowing, a subtle recalibration. "Good morning to you, too, Joy," he replied, his tone still friendly, but with an edge of caution. "Always a pleasure to be here with you lovely ladies." "Oh!" Cut the charm offensive, Blake. Joy shot back, waving her hand dismissively. She was leaning forward now, fully engaged, her entire body language shifting from casual observer to active prosecutor. "Let's talk about your recent comments about small-town values. You seem to think that living in a small town automatically makes someone more moral, more patriotic than the rest of us city dwellers." The other hosts exchanged glances. The audience, so buoyant moments before, fell into an uneasy silence. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the professional mediator, attempted a gentle redirect. "Joy, maybe we should," but Joy was just getting started. "I never said that." "Joy," Blake replied, his Oklahoma drawl becoming more pronounced to tell that anyone from his world would recognize. What I said was that small towns teach you certain values. Community, helping your neighbors, working hard for what you have. I didn't say anything about being better than anyone else. Oh, please. Joy waved her hand again, her voice dripping with dismissiveness. That's exactly what you implied. You country music stars love to paint yourselves as the real Americans, while the rest of us are what? Fake Americans. We're just as American as you are. Blake. Blake's jaw tightened imperceptibly. His hands, which had been resting casually on the armrests, pressed down slightly harder, but he kept his composure, maintained that professional veneer. Joy, I think you're putting words in my mouth that I never said. I respect people from all walks of life, whether they're from New York City or from a town with 3,000 people. Do you, though? Joy pressed on, her voice rising slightly, gaining momentum like a storm building on the horizon. Because your music, your whole persona, it's built on this idea that real America is somewhere out there in the heartland, and places like New York, places like where I grew up, somehow don't count. The studio air grew thick with tension. You could cut it with a knife. The audience was dead silent now, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond typical daytime television fodder. Camera operators glanced at each other nervously. In control room, producers were already frantically signaling, uncertain whether to let this play out or cut to commercial. Sarah Haynes attempted to jump in with a question about Blake's music, trying desperately to steer the conversation back to safer waters. But Joy wasn't finished. Not even close. You know what bothers me most about this whole small-town superiority complex? Joy continued, her hands gesturing emphatically, her entire being now locked onto Blake like a missile on its target. It's that you get to sit there and judge the rest of us while making millions of dollars singing about pickup trucks and dirt roads. You've been living in Hollywood and Nashville for decades. Blake, when's the last time you actually lived in one of these small towns you're always singing about? Blake's relaxed demeanor began to shift. His shoulders straightened. His spine grew rigid. For the first time since sitting down, he looked genuinely annoyed, not just offending himself, but personally affronted. The easygoing country boy was starting to crack, and something harder, something more dangerous was beginning to show through. Joy, Blake said, his voice controlled but with steel underneath. I may live in Nashville now, but I haven't forgotten where I come from. I was raised in Ada, Oklahoma. Population 12,000. My dad worked construction. My mom was a beauty shop owner. I know what it's like to grow up in a place where everybody knows everybody. And now you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Joy shot back without missing a beat, her voice rising with each word. You've got mansions in multiple states, private jets, the whole 9 yards. Don't you think it's a little disingenuous to keep playing this common man card? Blake's famous smile, that easy, disarming grin that had charmed America for decades, finally cracked. Shattered, really. You know what, Joy? His voice had changed entirely now. Gone was the promotional tour politeness. This was something raw, something real. Just because someone becomes successful doesn't mean they forget their roots. I've been blessed. Absolutely. But that doesn't change who I am or where I come from. And I'm proud of where I come from. Proud enough to exploit it for profit? Joy retorted, leaning back slightly, clearly enjoying the reaction she was getting. Her eyes were bright with the thrill of the chase. Your whole brand is built on this mythology of simple country folk versus sophisticated city people. It's divisive, Blake, and frankly, it's getting old. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Electric crackling. Every person in that room could feel it. The point of no return approaching fast. Whoopi tried once more to steer the conversation in a different direction, her voice carrying a note of warning. Maybe we should talk about the tour. But Blake was no longer interested in playing nice. Exploit it, Blake repeated, his voice rising for first time, genuine anger bleeding through his professional facade. Joy, I write and sing about my life, my experiences, the people I grew up with. That's not exploitation. That's authenticity. And if you can't tell the difference, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. The studio gasped an audible, collective intake of breath. Even the cameraman froze for a split second. This wasn't banter anymore. This wasn't friendly disagreement. This was a full-scale confrontation. And Blake Shelton had just fired back with both barrels. Joy's eyes flashed with pure anger. Her face flushed slightly. Her hands gripped the desk in front of her. Authenticity. She practically spat the word. Give me a break. Blake, you're about as authentic as a $3 bill. You're a manufactured product, just like every other country star churned out by the Nashville machine. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Even the other hosts looked uncomfortable now, shifting in their seats, exchanging worried glances. This had gone far beyond typical daytime television banter. The boundaries of professional discourse had been obliterated, and they were careening into territory no one had anticipated. Blake stood up slowly. It was a power move calculated or instinctive. It didn't matter. The effect was the same. At 6 feet 5 inches, Blake Shelton towered over the panel, his frame suddenly seeming larger, more imposing, more commanding than anyone in that studio had expected. The cowboy had risen, and the entire dynamic of the confrontation shifted in that single movement. You know what, Joy? His voice was measured now, controlled, but carrying an undercurrent of ice-cold fury. I've sat here and taken your shots because I respect this show, and I respect most of the people on it. But I'm not going to sit here and let you attack my character and my integrity. Oh, did I strike a nerve? Joy taunted, standing up as well, clearly unwilling to concede the physical advantage. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. The truth hurts, doesn't it, Blake? The truth? Blake's voice was steady now, dangerously calm. The truth is that you've been sitting behind this desk for years, throwing stones at people, tearing them down, making nasty comments about anyone who doesn't share your worldview. And you call that entertainment? Joy's face flushed deep red. I call it honesty. She shot back. Something you might want to try sometime. Blake shook his head slowly, a gesture of profound disappointment, more cutting than any words. Honesty would be admitting that you'd already made up your mind about me before I even walked in here. You don't want to have a conversation. Joy, you want to pick a fight. Maybe I do, Joy replied defiantly, her chin raised, her stance aggressive. Maybe it's time someone called you out on your act. The studio was electric with tension now. Every eye was locked on the confrontation. Cameras kept rolling, capturing every word, every gesture, every micro-expression. The producers had given up trying to control the situation. This was live television gold, controversial and explosive, the kind of moment that would dominate news cycle for weeks. Blake looked down at Joy with a mixture of disappointment and anger, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper that somehow carried more weight than any shout. You want to call me out? Fine, let's do this properly. Then he paused, letting the moment stretch, building the tension. You sit there every day criticizing people you've never met, places you've never been, experiences you've never had. You talk about small towns like there's some kind of joke, like the people who live there are beneath you. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms crossed offensively, but her voice remained combative. I never said they were beneath me. I said, your portrayal of them is fake. My portrayal. Blake's voice grew louder, losing that careful control. I didn't read about it in a book or watch it on television. Joy. I lived it. I lived in a place where when your neighbor's barn burned down, 20 families showed up the next day to help rebuild it, where when someone got sick, the whole community rallied around them. That's not fake. That's real life. Oh. Spare me the Norman Rockwell painting. Joy interrupted, her voice sharp and cutting. Small towns have problems, too, Blake. They have poverty, addiction, closed-mindedness. But you never sing about that, do you? You only sing about the pretty parts. Blake's hands clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles going white. You think I don't know about the hard parts? My hometown has struggled with factory closures, young people leaving because there aren't enough opportunities. I've seen families lose everything. But you know what? Those same people who are struggling still look out for each other. They still have dignity. They still have heart. And they still vote for politicians who keep them struggling. Joy shot back, her voice rising to match his intensity. But I suppose that's not something you want to talk about either, is it? The other hosts were frantically trying to signal for a commercial break, waving their hands, making cutting gestures across their throats. But the confrontation had taken on a life of its own, a runaway train that no one could stop. "There it is," Blake said, his voice quiet now, but somehow more dangerous for it. "There's a real agenda. This was never about my music or my authenticity. This is about politics. This is about the fact that you can't stand that there are millions of Americans who don't think like you, who don't vote like you, who don't share your vision of what America should be. Those millions of Americans are being manipulated," Joy countered, her voice sharp and accusatory by you, by the media, by politicians who tell them what they want to hear instead of what they need to know. Blake took a step closer to the panel, his voice rising with genuine passion. "Who decides that, Joy? Who decides what people need to know? You, the media, politicians, or maybe, just maybe, people are smart enough to decide for themselves." Joy slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing through the studio like a gunshot. "Not when they're being manipulated by celebrity millionaires who pretend to be just like them." Blake stood perfectly still for a long moment, staring at Joy with an expression impossible to read. The studio held its collective breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and took off his cowboy hat, an action loaded with symbolism that everyone in that room understood. "You know what, Joy?" His voice was eerily calm now, the eye of the hurricane. "You're absolutely right about one thing. I am a millionaire. I do live a different life now than I did growing up." He placed his hat on the table in front of him with deliberate precision, the gesture carrying more weight than any shout could have. "But there's one thing you're dead wrong about." His eyes locked onto Joy's with laser intensity. "I've never pretended to be anything other than exactly who I am. I've never lied about my success. I've never hidden my wealth. I've never claimed to be something I'm not." He paused, letting the question hang in the air like a blade. "Can you say the same?" Joy's face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks as if Blake had physically struck her. "What's that supposed to mean?" Her voice was smaller now, uncertain for the first time. Blake's smile was cold as ice, devoid of any warmth or humor. "It means maybe before you start lecturing other people about authenticity, you should take a long, hard look in the mirror." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, uncertain whether to keep filming or look away from what was happening. Joy's face cycled through several emotions: shock, confusion, anger, and finally settling on pure, undiluted rage. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "How dare you come onto my show and attack me personally?" Blake picked up his hat and placed it back on his head with slow, deliberate movements, each gesture carrying symbolic weight. "Joy, this is The View, not the Joy Behar Show. And I'm not attacking you personally. I'm responding to your personal attacks on me. You think you're so clever, don't you?" Joy's voice was getting louder again, shriller, losing controlled venom from earlier. "Coming in here with your folksy wisdom and your ash routine. Well, let me tell you something, cowboy. I've been in this business longer than you've been wearing that ridiculous hat." Blake's eyebrows raised slightly, a hint of genuine amusement crossing his face. "This business? You mean the business of entertainment? Because last I checked, we're both entertainers, Joy. The only difference is I don't pretend my entertainment is more important than anyone else's." "My entertainment?" Joy stood up straighter, her voice reaching crescendo. "I inform people, Blake. I educate them. I help them understand the world around them. What do? You help them escape from reality. And what's wrong with that?" Blake asked, his voice calm in stark contrast to Joy's escalating volume. The juxtaposition made his words cut even deeper. "What's wrong with giving people a few minutes of happiness? What's wrong with helping them forget their troubles for a little while?" Joy laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and ugly, because while they're forgetting their troubles, those troubles are getting worse. While they're listening to your songs about simpler times, the world is passing them by. Blake shook his head slowly, disappointment etched into every line of his face. "Joy, you talk about informing people and educating them, but all I've seen today is you try and tear me down. Is that what you call education? Is that what you call helping people understand the world? I'm helping them understand that people like you are selling them a fantasy. Joy shot back, her composure completely gone now. A fantasy that keeps them from demanding the real changes they need. And what changes are those, Joy? Blake's voice had an edge to it now, sharp and cutting. What exactly do you think I'm keeping people from demanding? Joy gestured wildly with her hands, her entire body language screaming frustration and anger. Better jobs, better health care, better education for their children. Instead of fighting for those things, they're content to live in your make-believe world where everything is simple and pure and good. Blake was quiet for a long moment, studying Joy's face with an intensity that seemed to see right through her. When he spoke, his voice was softer, but somehow more dangerous. A whisper that cut deeper than any shout. You know what I